SETI recording. Hey you guys, this is Mark.
This is Christine.
And welcome to another episode of the UNLearning Project podcast with your favoriteest hosts and hostess on the planet.
That's us.
I'm really excited about this episode in this series ongoing of the top 10 tips for unlearning in your life, and it's just this is the number one. This is the secret weapon. This is the thing. Like all these things we've talked about so far have been absolutely key, from stop doing what's not working to creating some space to the purge, creating even more space, getting rid of that nasty dead fish that's hiding in the back of the closet before it stinks up the rest of your stuff. But today we get to talk about something that's a little bit more maybe in the doing, but that also assists in the unlearning. Because it's a thing we get to do, but it's also a thing that allows like the unlearning to take place.
It's kind of one of those things that is so funny. It's which comes first, the chicken or the egg. You know, a lot of times people will say, I don't have time to meditate. I don't have space in my... Do you know
I dropped some of my chocolate muffin.
He's on camera. If you guys were listening to this, he's eating chocolate cake as we're recording this.
Why can't I?
Okay. Rewind. Anyways, I have heard this, and actually I was on a coaching call not long ago, and we're doing a 30 minutes a day for 30 days meditation challenge with some of my clients. And it was funny because the whole thing comes up like 30, you mean like 30 minutes in a row? Can I do 3 times 10 minutes? First of all, there's no right or wrong way, but what I wanted to tap into is this is one of those things that is actually creates space. So it's kind of, again, which came first, the chicken or the egg? A lot of times we think we can't do something because we don't have time or we don't have space. Energy, we don't have energy for it, we don't have physical time for it, we don't have bandwidth for it. Like there's just no room for it to enter our space. But it's often the very things, the rituals, as we'll talk about, this is actually one of the rituals for both of us, one of the things that we practice that generates more space, that creates more capacity for us. So even though we put creating space as number 2, what we meant by that was like, let's start to create space, but this is a massive tool to do that.
Well, and it's not like meditation, like, so you got to create the space in your life so that you have time to be in a space where you can meditate, right? This comes from like blocking time, making it a priority. Remember, show me your calendar, I'll show you your priorities, those kind of things. So the first 3 things that we talked about in this series, like those will aid in the creation of the space, the time, the priority to actually sit down and meditate. And meditation to me it's different than purging, it's different than creating space, because this is an activity that we do that rebalances my brain chemistry.
Well, let's talk about why meditate. Like people hear it all the time. Like, I meditate. You meditate.
Well, I'll finish what I was about to say. It rebalances my brain chemistry, right? It opens up the clutter that happens in my brain. And we've talked about like journaling and using different modalities to get it out. This is another one where if I feel like I'm really bound up in the afternoon or really cloudy in the morning, like just taking a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, 30 to do a meditation opens up a whole new world of opportunity in my mind, because it just allows me to release stuff and then brings in those creative juices. That's why.
That's why you do it.
That's why I do it.
That's a lot of people do. So one of the things I know for me, because I get this question a lot, it's definitely one of the practices that I encourage all my clients to do. We get in some sort of rhythm of it right off the bat, right away. I do it at the beginning of my sessions on all my coaching calls. I do some sort of meditation. It starts my days. It's really in my world, and I know it's in your world. We did a meditation together yesterday. But I hear a lot, it's like, where do I start, or why do I need to do it? And so I think what I wanted to touch on is, for most people, many people that I start working with, and I know for myself, like you said, the clutter, like the feeling of overwhelm, or the feeling of always feeling behind, or the feeling of not having enough, puts a lot of pressure. And all this pressure, we say it's the outside world putting pressure on us, but we're the ones putting pressure on ourselves, right? Like it's
Right.
so much of it is fabricated. It's all an illusion that we think we need to do, or we think we need to be, and we generate all this internal, it's like a pressure cooker that builds up. And there are real things going on in life. Like there could be people that are sick, there could be illnesses, there could be job situations, there could be kids stressful situations that are adding pressure. There could be chemical or environmental factors. So we're like this pressure cooker, right? And we don't ever take time to just like let the lid off and let the steam out. So initially
really
when
good
I work
analogy.
with clients is if my body, my brain, my this container, this vessel I have is like a pressure cooker, what have I been doing to release and create the space, and also just release some of the, like take some of the pressure off. So for many people, that's exactly what it is. For me, it's a meditation provides so many things that I want to get into it later. But at the very beginning, it's look, I'm just inserting a tiny bit of space in your schedule so that we can take the lid off that pressure cooker and start to let some of that steam out, where you can kind of like feel the weight, that load just get a little bit lighter. The breath, that constriction you feel in your chest, that tightness in your chest or your throat gets a little bit looser, and you start to feel yourself open up. The body that was really tense and tight because it was in protection mode or go mode or fight mode starts to relax a little bit. So as the muscles relax, the lungs expand, the mind releases a little bit. Like you said, it gives us an opportunity to then go, wow, whew, okay, great, now what? Like we can go right back into the real world and go back into the pressure, or we can choose to come out and do something different.
Yeah. So one of the things that I have been talking about more and more lately, and really reflecting on personally also, which is where the talking about is coming from, is so what's your personal standard for how you feel as you go throughout the day? So what does that look like for you? What does it feel like as you go throughout the day? Are there, do you consistently feel that stress in your shoulders? Are you consistently like, surrendering to this, or just surviving with this, with a tight jaw or a tension headache or a pressure headache all day long? Like, do you just notice like you're always kind of on edge? And that becomes the norm for so many of us because we're, especially at work, we're so deadline driven. Like I've got to have done, and then we opt into the pressures of work, and then work gives us all these deadlines and pressures and all these other things. And so it becomes normal to like walk around with a heavy dose of cortisol coursing through your veins, and that becomes the norm. Now, that is an adopted, chosen behavior. You may not think that it is, but the reality is like you have opted into the situations that have created that for you over time, and that has become your reality.
I remember that, well, Joe Dispenza, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to say, too, like when we were listening to one of the Joe Dispenza talks, he refers to it as our emotional home. And so to your point of like, it's chosen, but for many of us, it's chosen unknowingly, right? We're not walking around going, me, I want to be tight, I want to be tense, I want to be overwhelmed, right? It just becomes what's familiar.
Right.
And
it is the
brain, the body, it's kind of like, it becomes our shell, right? And so we keep going back to what's familiar, even though it's extremely uncomfortable. And we've seen us, we see ourselves do this all the time in jobs and relationships, in our health, where we just stay where it is just because it's predictable and it's what we know. But there is a different way.
Well, and so the patterns, the beliefs, the systems, the daily processes, the daily habits, even the unconscious learned normalizing of that stressful situation, of that stressful behavior is something that you have learned, and that has just become the normal. And so the unlearning tip of the day is like, holy shit, what if that doesn't have to be how it is? Like, what if what got you to this level of success at that level of stress doesn't have to be the way? What if there's another way that's much less stressful or more free of stress that allows you to accomplish or achieve, whatever word you want to use, that next level of success in your career, your home life, your body, et cetera, et cetera. And that's where I'm going with this idea is like you can unlearn the current patterns, beliefs, and systems and processes and habits that are keeping you stuck at that level of stress, and open up to a whole different level. right? Open up to a whole nother opportunity of what's out there. And that's what we're getting at from this unlearning. So when I take time to meditate, it actually disrupts my body's pattern and cycle. It allows me to feel differently. And little by little over time, what starts to happen is like, oh, like this is a new and different, better way to feel. And that can actually become the adopted standard.
Well, it does, right? Because then when you realize what it feels like to have your muscles be softer, your head be a little bit clearer. It's just like when we do a workout and you feel great, and then initially it's awkward and you're stumbling all over yourself and you're thinking too much. And I just want to encourage you guys that if you haven't done it, it is awkward in the beginning because you don't have the time. We don't know what to do with ourselves when we're just sitting there, right? Our mind's racing. But like you said, the more comfortable you get with feeling at ease in your body, which, trust me, that's an uncomfortable feeling for a lot of people. That's a new thing. Yeah. The more it becomes something that you're like, wow, that feels amazing. The body always wants to feel amazing, right? And so once we have access to that, it's uncomfortable to keep going back to the old way. It's kind of like going on vacation and you just discover this really amazing place, and then you have to go back to where it's not so awesome, right? And we've all had that experience too. And now that we know what's out there, it's like, ooh, how do I get more of that?
That just happened for us.
Yeah, it just happened for us. We went to Costa Rica and I was like there, and it was just like, oh, everything, like the sky was shining, the water, it was everything about it was amazing.
It was so vibrant.
It was so vibrant, and we were vibrating at such a high level. Like we had the best weekend together as a couple. Like it was just, you were doing your keynote. It was just like everything was so aligned that when you came home, there was a massive whoa, this isn't Costa Rica anymore. And yet that's kind of an exaggeration, but it's not about the place, it's the whole vibration that we were in. So as you go into a new vibration, when you go back to the old, I want to just make sure that I draw parallels across the boards, whether it's vacation or starting to work out. Yeah. When you learn what it feels like to feel amazing in your body, you're very acutely aware of eating crap or when your body's out of alignment and stuff like that. So it's a great opportunity to start to experience that.
Didn't that just come up in conversation like yesterday? Yeah, it did, because we were at lunch yesterday. And
with the kids.
And Grayson is like, well, wouldn't it just be better if healthy food tasted better, right? And not healthy food didn't taste as good. Then people would just eat more healthy food, right? But we're waiting for the food to change its taste in order for us to like it more, when the reality is, like, if you just consumed more green liquids and more vegetables and healthy meats and eggs and things like this, and if you just consumed healthy food, suddenly, like, I don't know what's in this muffin that makes it taste so amazing. I think there's some healthy stuff in here, I'm hoping.
But your body does start to reject the stuff.
But your body starts to reject the donuts and the candy and the, et cetera. It's just like, I know that when I eat that, I'm going to feel crappy, right? And so therefore, like, once your standard for feeling good starts to outweigh the standard of feeling good right now, then
it's a whole new standard.
Real change. And so meditation allows us to get back to the point, allows us to do that in our body, literally, like right now. Like, you could literally stop what you're doing right now, shut off this podcast, shut off the video, and go to your Calm app, or go back to your Headspace, or just breathe for the next 5 minutes, and you can completely reset how your body feels.
Yeah. So I want to, resetting isn't actually also, we are resetting by doing that, by taking that pressure off. And the second level of that is, like, now you can start to actually use that intentionally. We can use the meditation to go, well, what the next level is also, like, I can just create the space. I can let some of that pressure off, and I have this little reset, and it feels good. It's like pulling a pit stop, putting gas in the car, and re-energized. But here's the thing, if we just jump back, and the container's sort of been emptied, right? We get to clear the mind, we get to take some of the load off. But if we go right back to the same old pattern of the day, or the same way of talking to our partner or our kids or our staff or whatever, we just jump right back into the pressure cooker and nothing changes, then all it was like a good moment of relief for a second. So, which honestly, that can be a tool in of itself, right? It's like, hey, I just need to have these little spurts throughout the day, which take the pressure off, which allow me to keep going. So it'll allow you to keep going. It will increase your capacity, and yet it's such a starting place for something so much more, right? Because there's so much more you can go. So you can start with just breath work. I just wanted to say to that, as we start to create space, now we can actually set an intention to go, okay, well, what frequency, what vibration, or what feeling do I want to get in? And we can start to use that meditation to actually access certain emotions or certain frequencies or certain feelings in our body that we had a hard time accessing before because we were like busy and cluttered. We didn't have access to it, right? So you don't have access to certain emotions. Like you can't be angry and filled with gratitude at the same time. Like they can't coexist. So if I'm angry, I'm pissed, and I'm hot, that meditation provides a gap. Like it, that space, it gives me the space. And now when I'm in it, I can choose. I can start to select. Once I offload that emotion of anger, or I allow it to pass through me, and I create some space, now I have the ability to selectively choose what do I want to bring in. And so I just wanted to say that because that came up the other day when someone was like, oh, they're great little breaks for me, but then they were just going back to the same old. And I'm like, okay, congratulations, that was like kindergarten, and now we've graduated, and now we start to get to put some more intention behind who am I coming back to be, right? Whether it's like you're gonna meet with your team, or you're gonna head home and you're gonna walk in, and now I'm gonna be like this supportive partner for my spouse or my kids. I get to have more compassion right now. Well, what does feeling compassion feel like in my body right now? Because everything we do is really to access an emotional state, right? Like I want to feel relaxed, or I want to feel in love, or I want to feel connected. And so we can actually use meditation to start to set that and invite that feeling, that emotion, that vibration into our body, so that when we go out, we literally did come out a different a different person. We shifted our chemistry.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, just to use a non-meditation example here. So if I decide that, I don't know, I want this left arm to do certain things better or different, but it's weak now, I get to start by just doing some basic exercises, and then I can move over time as I gain mastery, it gets stronger and the muscle gets stronger. I can use it to do other things, be more specific, and do different kinds of high fives as opposed to just
I think meditation, well, is like anything else, we're mastering, right? There's all these different levels of how to explore. And what's cool is there's so many great apps out there. There's Headspace, there's the Insight Timer, there's the Calm app. We'll reference some of these. I'm sure you guys have heard them. You might be listening to them. There's thousands of meditations on YouTube you can access. And so there's all different types of meditation out there. You can start wherever you want. It really depends, what do I need right now? Do I just need a space to clear my mind? Do I want to just release some anxiety, right? Am I looking for that, taking the weight off? But we can also really start to get intentional with it. And so I think that's a huge one. I know personally, I can speak to what I've worked on, what's come up for me recently. I spent a lot of time this last year in meditation, specifically connecting with that vibration of love, really feeling what love felt like in my body. What does it feel like to be loved? What does it feel like to be pouring love? What does it feel like to be so full of love that it's just oozing out of me, that I have this desire to pour it into my clients and into my partner and into my kids and into my work. And it's just it's like a river. And so almost I call it, when I do these meditations live, or I'm guiding people through, it's like I'm bathing in this river or this bath of this emotion. And it's so beautiful. And getting in that vibration, it really does start to just radiate from you. Well, can you relate, doing the meditation to access a certain?
Yeah, I think yes, and I want to play with this a little bit, because I want to put the question out there. I want to come back to the question in a second. The question is, do you think men and women experience meditation differently, right? So, and here's what I say, because my very dude-oriented brain, when I think about, I'm going to use that one Joe Dispenza manifestation meditation that takes 23 minutes, where we kind of go and we get into the feeling of the thing that I want to be able to create.
Now that's a creation.
That's a creation thing, right? And so, but
I'm very
do I feel bathed in the emotion of creation? No, but I get into my version of what it feels like to have that level of abundance, or to be in that creation, right? But for me, it's very much tactical, right? I'm choosing to go into that one because today that's what I want to go to work on. Sometimes it's just I just need to reset my brain, right?
Yeah.
And so on those, like I lay down on the floor at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I put it in. Sometimes I nap, sometimes not, but it's like 20 minutes later, like I'm right as rain, ready to rock and roll. So anyway, it's
Well, I think to your
do
to your
we
question,
experience it differently?
well, I think we all are different souls. We're all different, whether it's gender, whatever. I think it's what you want to work on and where you're at. And if you're really in the stillness, you don't have to, like, you're not here to navigate the meditation. You can do guided meditations that are navigating you and helping you in the beginning. But I was giving an example where I think that's a very specific thing. So if I'm working with a client who is having trouble getting out of a certain vibration or a certain emotion, like I'm trying to, we're using the meditation as a tool to move up that scale. I was on a call, this is a perfect example. So I was on a call with a client the other day, and they had some stuff going on in their relationship, and there was some issues around trust, and there's a lot of protection, and there's a lot of like, I don't really feel like I can trust you yet. I have to protect myself from you. Like, I understand your side of the story, but I'm not ready to like fully like love and right. It wasn't like we couldn't make that leap yet. So it was like, okay, so can I move from, because she was trying to make the leap so quickly like that. And I was saying, well, can we move from we forgive and we understand. So now we have an understanding, right, of why he did or why she did. Now can I just sort of sit in a feeling of acceptance? Can we actually just experience what acceptance feels like? Because when we're resisting acceptance, it's very hard to go like, yeah, now I'm wide open to trust and receive love. Like, we still want to give it, but I haven't fully accepted the situation, accepted you, accepted myself, accepted, all that is. So can we just accept also that we're not ready to give? And when we just sat and meditated on that feeling of what it felt like to be accepting and, walk through some guided things, all of a sudden it was like that opened the door to the next feeling, which is, okay, with all that acceptance, can I have some compassion? And what does it feel like to have compassion? Oh, and all of a sudden I have compassion, now I can have empathy. Yeah. And I have empathy, then I start to feel that love. It's like peeking in instead of trying to force myself to access love. When I'm like, I don't feel very loving right now at all.
So what's interesting about that, so in classroom training, we call that experience before learning, right? It's literally like we give the experience, and then we allow the learner to distill down or debrief what they just experienced, and then so we put them in the moment, or we put them in the state, or we put them in the activity of being in that, in this case, let's just say it's feeling compassion or feeling forgiveness or whatever. And then afterwards, so describe what that felt like, right? And so we walk them in maybe through meditation, maybe we just walk them through a guided journaling exercise. And then on the backside of that, you actually debrief what it was. It's like, oh, that's what it feels like to be in that state. And what's interesting about that, and why I think that qualifies in my book as unlearning, is because sometimes I'm so stuck, I can't get into that state of forgiveness. I can't find a way to get into that state of seeing something or feeling something that hasn't manifested physically before my eyes yet. So let's take money as an example, right? Or abundance or whatever. I do this a lot because this is something I work on being in business. And it's been a personal journey of mine to create more financial abundance in the business. So for a minute, I get to sort of suspend belief, and we can do this through meditation, to go into the feeling of what it feels like when there's more than you can imagine coming through the door, more leads than you can imagine, more love than you can imagine, more whatever it is, whatever the thing is that you feel like you desire. And immediately when I can get into the feeling, it naturally, without you doing anything, it unlearns the part of you that says you can't have it.
It can, yeah. Or it can bring, or you can also listen to yourself, because as you get into those emotions, I know I've had experiences where I'm starting to really feel it, and then I will actually feel resistance in my body at the same time. So it's like I'm going there, and then there's still some program that rises up and goes, oh, but what about that thing or whatever? And so then you get to see where there is resistance. If there is resistance, right? I've had that
'Cause-
situation
here's,
as well. So
here's what comes, and this is why all that stuff comes up, because just remember, inside your mind, like you have this 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old version of you who has kept you safe and alive until this very moment right now. They are the ones that have been chiefly driving the underlying program that has kept you, your body, safe and alive until now. And so when I start considering a new behavior, so let's just say this person who hurt me, right? So I have a story around how I should react to somebody who has broken my trust, right?
Which is, I better protect myself because they're going to hurt me again.
Sure.
And
yep. So we've all got our own story around when people break our trust, this is how we react. Some of us trust more easily the second time. Some of us don't trust more easily the second time. Some of us are so broken that we feel like we can't ever trust again, right? And so that inner 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old version of you, the small version of you inside, based on the program that they adopted when they were young, has been with you and still keeping you safe. And so they are the primary driver behind the story you currently live. So when I start opening up and say, okay, so I'm gonna breathe. I'm gonna open up to experiencing the feeling of trust. What did it feel like one time in my life when I experienced just amazing trust, right? And somebody followed through and they really upheld the pillars of belief that this formulates what it means to feel trusted. And I was thinking, oh, like that trust feels good. Like the mother is caring for you and taking care of you, when you're a small child. And like, so there's just this deep level of like oxytocin starts to run through your veins. But then what happens, to Christine's point, is you have this inner child that's like, but what about this? And what about that? And they're going to start bringing up all this other resistance as well.
So I want to give a tool that I use in that very specific moment that I think is really powerful, because this has come up for me this week and it came up on a couple calls. And so I had a very similar experience where I was in the middle of meditation. I shared this with you a couple times. I'm stepping into what it feels like a very bold step for me into the next level with some of the work that I'm doing and some of my coaching and some decisions I'm making in my business. And as I'm stepping forward, there's been a lot of resistance showing up just in my life in general from people that are close to me, and I'm starting to see this. And there was this stuff coming up that was like, I felt like I was having to justify myself all the time or fight for what I believed in. And why can't they see, like, do they not think I'm valuable enough? Like, do they not trust me? Do they not think I can handle it? I actually started to question, like, am I equipped? Like, because I was getting that coming back at me from people who are very close to me, right? So we think it's always going to be, your family's your number one fan or your best friends or whatever. And oftentimes what we actually hear is those are the very people that are giving resistance, and because they're our biggest mirror, right? So if anyone would have asked me before, said, like, do you believe in yourself? Do you trust yourself? Do you feel supported? I would have been like, all day long, like, I got this in space. Like, I have so much belief in myself. I know my worth. And I did. And I really, like, I knew it, and I was grounded in it. And yet, as I go into the next phase, which is like the unknown, I'm taking this next leap, and I'm like, yes, I'm doing this. It's still unknown, and the brain is still going like, whoa, right? It's scary, and it's so that like survival brain kicks in. And so I get to master a whole new level. I get to step into a whole new level of believing in myself. Like, yes, I believed in myself doing what I used to do because I could do that stuff in my sleep. I had mastery there.
Right.
And as I step into this new space, what I found, I was getting in this, exactly what we were just talking about. I was in meditation, and I was visualizing, I was using meditation to visualize, to create. What is it that I'm calling in? Visualization is something else that we're really big on, and you can use meditation to really get so clear on all the elements and stuff. And as I was doing this, I was feeling it, I was seeing it, but I was also sensing something in my body that was like, I wasn't 100%, it wasn't like flowing through me freely. There was some resistance. And as I started to ask myself, again in meditation, it's like, okay, let me just be curious and open. What's this resistance about? I could feel like, I heard the voice like that has been coming up for me saying like, I don't feel supported. I don't feel supported. And I like, no one believes in me. And like, I don't have access to what I need. And right. And I heard that voice, and I've heard that voice before, right? Previously when I was doing work, and here it came, and I was like, oh my gosh, right? I get to go, I'm going into a whole new level. So this requires me to like step into even more of that. Mm-hmm. And so as you talked about the child, the 4-year-old child, right? And I'm like, I could think back to a time, but when did I trust myself, or when did I trust other people?
Mm-hmm.
But in that moment, what has been working for me is to go back to that girl, that 5-year-old or 4-year-old. I have a very specific place. I remember I'm always in Italy, in front of this like oven. I used to sit in and look. It was like this little glass oven, and I used to like have these dreams. Anyway, and I was just talking to her, and I was just like, hey, all the resources you need are available to you right now. Like, what do you need? Just ask me. And I was talking to this child and, telling her that I believed in her, and I was holding her, and I was asking her for what she needed and supporting her. And it was like I was creating space for that child to feel safe again. And so in doing that, I wasn't trying to talk her into it. I was just like literally holding her, and had some other beautiful experiences that came through that. But it just felt, it was such a nurturing place to be again, right?
Wow.
So holding space for that part of you that is afraid or scared or not trusting, instead of fighting it or trying to talk yourself into it, you can also just give it a hug and just be like, what if I just hold you right now and let you know, like, I got you.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So this is way
That's
deeper than I thought we were going to go to in this episode on
it
meditation.
Is deep, but I go deep.
Because we've gone from like, over the course of this video / podcast, we've gone from like, hey, you can just take 5 minutes and completely reset the way your body feels right now, and like just take a minute and breathe, to like, holy shit, we're gonna go to inner childhood stuff and like start solving some like deep inner trust issues.
Deep into the inner child, but let's be honest, guys. Yeah. If you work with me, I go deep, I go fast. So we jump in the deep end. So I can't stay on the super.
She does.
Okay.
So
that was one modality. We were talking about modalities. We were saying you can use meditation to take the pressure off the pressure cooker. We can use meditation to create. What did you say? To change frequencies. Right? What do I want to dial into right now? What emotion? We can use meditation to create. And that's where it started from. Because we were talking about creating and manifesting what we want, calling it in, and what kind of creates resistance.
So there's just an infinite amount of space that you can play with inside this whole world of meditation as you begin to build up that muscle of trust of the process and that muscle of leaning into what it feels like. But just to bring it back to the very base level, especially if this is new for you, is meditation is just, it becomes your secret weapon as you start to do it. Just like you probably don't consider it to be an option. Maybe you do. You're probably not our target audience if this is true for you, if it wasn't true for you. But if you're like, you probably don't consider it an option to just get up and go to work without brushing your teeth, or to go to bed without brushing your teeth, right? Most of us are doing that once, if not twice, maybe sometimes 3 times a day, right? And it becomes like a thing. So once you get into the habit of meditating, it'll almost feel like you need to. It'll be almost like your mouth feels dirty if you haven't brushed your teeth for a while, or it's like getting time because you ate too much sugar and like you just want to brush your mouth. That's like the equivalent of meditation for your mind and body.
Keeping it clean.
And just resetting and just cleaning it out. Once in the morning, once in the afternoon, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, and just creating, even if it's just 5 minutes. If this is not a habit for you now, you start there. Right, just 5 minutes, and you can go to 10 minutes if you use like the Calm app or Headspace or one of those things. So these things will guide you through and literally teach you how to do it. This is kind of a podcast to bring awareness about meditation, not necessarily a podcast to teach you how. We might get into that at some point.
Well, let's put some links. We'll put some links to some of our favorite apps. And to be honest, there is no right or wrong way. I think the next thing I wanted to kind of jump into was all these things that we teach, these tools, they're literally tools in the toolbox, right? Whether it's meditation, journaling, movement, prayer, like there's so many ways that we can bring more awareness, more light, more growth into our life. And so this is one way. And so if you're having resistance to this, I would just be curious about it. Just be like, well, because I actually have worked with a client. I worked with him for about 1.5 years, and for the longest time, he just wasn't open to it. He just didn't have an interest. He kind of resisted it. And then just recently, the rest of the group, there was a couple other people in the group that were really seeing some benefits of it. And so he started, and it was like, all of a sudden, he was like, whoa, right? And so what was the resistance about? It's just curious, right? If you have resistance, because it can literally be just sitting in silence. It doesn't mean you need to download a guided app. It can be like, just sit and be still. Be still and do nothing. Just allow yourself space and time to be quiet. And the reason I'm bringing that up is in speaking about resistance, like, I just wanted to address, like, what is meditation anyways? Because there are some people out there that are actually afraid of meditation. And this actually also came up recently when I was talking to a couple people, and I can relate to this because I grew up in an environment where meditation was actually frowned upon. It was thought to be like, I don't want to say devil's work, but it was maybe it was the devil's work, but we weren't supposed to be meditating. And so when we actually look at what the term to meditate on means, when I'm meditating on something, it just means I'm turning it over in my mind. So whether you're meditating on the rosary, when people are praying and they have a rosary and they're moving from bead to bead, that's what they're doing. They're meditating on each word. If somebody is praying and they're reading scripture, they're meditating and they're repeating scripture over and over again. That is a form of meditation. We are focusing the mind and the heart together. We're creating alignment between the mind and the heart, coherence, right? And we are repeating something that we want to ingrain, we want to embody. And so you can meditate on the Word of God, you can meditate on a scripture, you can meditate on an affirmation. We hear people, on a mantra, they'll say something and they'll just, I haven't ran long distance in a long time, but that was one of my big strategies when I was a long distance runner. I'd be training for a marathon or a half, and I'd be literally repeating the same 2 to 3 phrases to myself over and over again, getting my mind, my body, my rhythm in sync. And as you do so, it starts to open up all the centers of your brain, and you create at such a faster rate. So I just wanted to bring that up because sometimes it gets like this weird vibe or weird rap that people are like, oh, meditation is like this weird thing. All it means is to be still and turn over, right? So you're accessing and you're staying in a certain state. Yeah. Really. So the question is, if those people out there that you think you're not meditating, trust me, you're meditating anyways. You're probably meditating on some shit you don't want in your life, and that's why it keeps showing up, because you keep allowing it space and time on your schedule. So you're already meditating, whether you think you are or not. My question to you is, can we sit and actually be intentional about what we're meditating on? Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. I think it's a great point. I just was at an event the other day where they did breath work, right? Just 3 breaths. It was very simple. And she's like, this isn't religious, right? I'm like, you're taking breaths. We don't have, but that becomes, there's this stigma that makes people uncomfortable around it because they've associated it, or somebody said something at one time, or they're just not sure. So many of you are just so caught up in giving a shit about what other people think about how you go about living your life, and you need to unlearn some of that. And this is one of those areas where this is something that's very, very healthy for you. It is, if you don't like the word meditation, cool, you can call it whatever you want. Call it breath work, call it stillness, call it mindfulness, I don't care. That's what we choose to call it, because to us, that's what it is, that turning over in the mind. I love the way you put that.
Yeah, and it's creating space. And for me, I'm just sharing a lot of my personal experiences on here because I've had my own journey with it, as have you. And I really, it's now such a huge part of my practice. But, no matter what, I'm big into the spiritual side of things. I'm big into the soul work, whether it was Jesus or Buddha, whoever it doesn't matter if it was a religious leader, anybody who walks in faith, all of us, having a period of stillness gives us access to our true soul, our spirit, right? You can't access spirit when your life is crazy busy and you're going crazy and you're trying to run, you can't access intuition, you can't access spirit, you can't access that. You're just in the world, you're being distracted and pulled and energetically attached to everything and everyone. And what I see is there's so much hurt, there's so much frustration, there's so much pain in relationships and disconnection from people at work, feeling unmotivated, unfulfilled in their work. So many people having so much like physical stuff, material things, and feeling so empty. And I really believe that the reason we feel empty is that we're disconnected. We're disconnected from each other and from ourselves. And the reality is you can only connect to someone to the level you are connected to yourself.
Yeah.
And you can only really connect to yourself to the level that you are connected to all that is. You know, and so it's this beautiful dance where we can start to spend more time getting to know ourselves.
You bet.
Yeah. And it's such a beautiful way to do that. So that's what this is about, is am I creating the space for connection?
It is.
You know, and doing that. Yeah.
So meditation, tip number 4 on the list of top 10 ways to unlearn.
Yeah.
In the Great Unlearning Project.
I want to say something. We are doing these 10 tips. We're going to keep going through these. For us, as we wrote these out, this is really, I mean, if you do them sequentially, they will pay off, because, you know, you got to create, you got to stop, you got to create space. The decluttering is huge. If you then can start to meditate and select, what do I want to create and allow in my space? You know, it can be a precursor to prayer and creation. You know, you can start to really utilize these tools working together, these steps. And that's when you start to accelerate the results. You guys want faster results? Like, start to stack these things together, because stacking makes a big difference. I just want to say that we are going to keep diving into this. We had talked at some point about bringing somebody on and doing a live coaching or Q&A. So if you guys are listening to this and you have questions, you can head on over to our UNLearning Project Facebook group, where we upload the podcast episodes in there as well. And we'd love to hear your feedback if you guys have questions, because we are always, if you guys post questions, we'll answer them on the show. And if you want to volunteer to be laser coached on our show, make sure that you join the UNLearning Facebook group, because we are going to be offering up the opportunity to be laser coached on the show in that group. So I just wanted to put that in there.
So the way you find that, literally just open your Facebook app or go to Facebook on your computer and type in on the search bar the Unlearning Project, Great Unlearning Project. Either one of those should bring it up for you. You can request some access and come hang out with us.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Very good. Thank you guys for tuning in to this episode of the Great Unlearning Project. The focus on meditation today, as a recap, the last 3 things we've talked about have been stop doing what's not working, create some white space, purging those things that's stinking up your space mentally and physically in your life. Today we talked about meditation, and coming up, we're going to talk about level number 5, which is becoming the observer. There's your teaser on that one coming up here next week. Thank you guys for tuning in. We love you. We appreciate you. It's your time to unlearn.